at 8 to 12. That morning, my sister sent me a single sentence that snapped 15 years of forced harmony inside our family. "I'm quitting my job. You'll support us while I sort things out." No hello, no explanation, just entitlement packaged as a text. I wiped my hands on a dish trowel, stared at the words like they were a crack spreading across a window, and typed 4 words I had never allowed myself to say. "That's not on me." Then I opened my laptop, clicked on the overseas contract that had been sitting in my inbox for weeks, and signed it before my courage could evaporate. 10 minutes passed, quiet, steady, before my phone vibrated again. Mom. But what she wrote didn't just test my patience, it pushed me toward a decision I'd been avoiding my entire life: stay chained to blood, or finally choose my own freedom. Before we get too deep, hit like and tell me, have you ever been the designated responsible one who finally snapped and said no? When people talk about family keeping you grounded, they never mention how heavy the ground becomes when you're the one carrying everyone else's weight. That's always been my role. Emma Pierce, 32, Operations Manager, the human embodiment of a color-coded spreadsheet. My parents like to call me the steady one. What they meant was the daughter who never refuses, never complains, never drops a ball no matter how many are handed to her. Our Sunday dinners looked warm from the outside. A roast in the oven, football murmuring from the living room, candles glowing against framed photos of vacations that only happened because I quietly paid for them. Underneath all that coziness, everything was calculated. My time, my wallet, my sanity. Mom would pass the Brad with a gentle smile and say, "You know, your sister's creative soul just needs extra support right now." Translation: Jenna's newest meltdown came with a bill that I, once again, would be covering. Dad would grunt from his seat, "Emma, grab the check, will you?" as if it were a family tradition blessed by generations. In Jenna, hair curled to effortless perfection, voice dipped in honey, would beam like she'd earned another donation from the Bank of Emma. I'd sit there, smiling, pretending my chest didn't tighten every time I mentally subtracted the numbers from my rent money. I paid her phone plan, her medical co-pays, her dog's vet bills. Yes, the dog I've never even seen. My reminders app looked like a financial crime scene. And for years, I convinced myself that being the backbone made me valuable, worthy, loved. But lately, that glue felt like restraints disguised as responsibility. Mom always said family evens out in the long run, but she never realized that even meant I bled a little more each time someone else refused to stand on their own feet. I kept telling myself Jenna would eventually grow up, find stability, maybe pay me back. But she never did. And somehow I was always the fallback. Even Mike, my boyfriend, gentle but blunt when it mattered, noticed. "You know they don't love you because you fix everything, right?" he told me once. "They love you because it's easy." I laughed, but his words clung to me, quiet and sharp. The last family dinner I attended, Jenna pranced in nearly half an hour late wearing an outfit that could pay one of my utility bills for 3 months. Mom wrapped her up in a hug like she'd returned from surviving a disaster. "You've had such a hard week, sweetheart." I poured the wine, pretending I didn't hear the worship in her voice. Later, when Mom leaned close and whispered, "You're lucky, Emma. You don't need anyone to take care of yourself," I smiled with my teeth, swallowing the burn in my throat. That night, I opened my notes app and stared at the long list of debts again. Each line was a quiet confession I'd never dared to voice. Phone plan, car insurance, pet expenses, emergency transfers, little sacrifices that stacked higher each year. It wasn't just financial weight, it was proof of how much I'd surrendered to keep the peace floating. I didn't know it then, but the peace I kept paying for was already cracking. And something inside me, something small and tired, was starting to push back. It began exactly the way patterns always unravel, subtly, almost politely. A missed reimbursement here. Hey, can you spot me until next month there? But by autumn, every favor had morphed into obligation. Nobody asked anymore. They just expected. Then came the night Jenna announced she'd quit her job. She delivered it like a poetic manifesto. It was toxic, she sighed at dinner, stabbing her mashed potatoes dramatically. I'm prioritizing my mental health. Mom clasped her hands, glowing with pride. That's so brave, sweetheart. Meanwhile, when I took one sick day last year, she told me not to be overly dramatic. Jenna's boyfriend, Caleb, lifted his drink and grinned. She's starting something artistic, something meaningful. Dad nodded solemnly. Faith, that's what matters. I wanted to ask whether faith covered rent, but I pressed my tongue to the roof of my mouth and left a silence swallow me. After dinner, Mom pulled me into the kitchen, whispering urgently, Honey, Jenna is going through a tough time. She just needs a little runway. You understand? Oh, I understood perfectly. That runway was paved with my direct deposits. That night, sitting alone in my dark apartment, I scrolled through my notes again. Payments, bills, transfers. Each line throbbed like a bruise. It wasn't a budget anymore. It was a record of my own exhaustion. 2 weeks later, the text arrived. The one that rolled the first domino. A little after 8, then again before 12. The sunlight was soft, innocent. My phone buzzed once. I'm quitting my job. You'll take care of us while I sort things out. No hesitation, no question, just a command. I stared at the screen, toothbrush hanging forgotten from my mouth, and something inside me finally shifted. Maybe it was Mike's voice echoing in my head. You've been paying for permission to be loved. I wiped my hands, took a breath, and typed back the only sentence that felt like truth. That's not on me. My hand trembled as I hit send. It felt like detonating the only bridge that had ever existed between me and them. The silence that followed was thick and strangely peaceful. No reply, just my heartbeat and the hum of the bathroom fan. I wandered into the living room and stared at the Dublin contract waiting on my screen. Housing included, salary triple what I made now, a start date that suddenly felt like a rescue. I had avoided signing it for months, always thinking, what about Mom? What about Jenna? What about the guilt? But now I clicked sign without letting my fear talk me out of it. A tiny notification flashed across the screen. Document complete. It was small, almost anticlimactic, but it felt like a key turning in a rusted lock. Exactly 10 minutes later, my phone lit up. Mom. I didn't open the message immediately. I just stared at her name glowing like a warning flare. And somehow, I already knew whatever was inside wasn't love, it was consequences. Her message was short. If you won't help your sister, don't bother to come to Thanksgiving. I stared at it until the screen went black. Years ago, that sentence would have gutted me. Not because of the holiday, but because exclusion meant I'd failed them. It meant guilt, punishment, shame. But now, I laughed, quiet, disbelieving. That's supposed to scare me, I whispered, but it feels like stepping out into fresh air. I sat at my desk again, opened my laptop, and looked at the contract confirmation glowing like a doorway I had never allowed myself to walk through. Dublin, housing included, a new start, a life I had only imagined in daydreams. And it hit me. My family hadn't just drained my finances, they drained the part of me that believed I could exist without them. That belief was finally coming back to life. I opened my banking app. My pulse steadied. Then I started cutting ties, one quiet click at a time. Remove from plan, cancel insurance, deactivate utilities, freeze joint accounts, transfer savings to a new private bank. Each cancellation felt like reclaiming a piece of myself I thought was gone. For a moment, I expected lightning to strike, or my mother to somehow sense the shift and call. But there was only silence, clean and strangely comforting. My phone buzzed again, a voicemail from Aunt Rose. "Families help each other, dear. Maybe you can stretch a little more this season. God will return it tenfold." Delete. I didn't even hesitate. Mike called that night, his voice warm, steady, proud. "You did it, didn't you?" I breathed out slowly. "I think so." I finally said no. "You didn't say no," he told me gently. "You said yes to yourself." That line stayed with me like a warm echo. After we hung up, I opened a fresh document titled Exit Plan. I listed the steps like they were instructions for a life raft. Remove my name from their accounts, close shared services, protect my savings, buy my plane ticket, pack, leave. When I finished, I sat back, staring at the plan glowing on the screen. For the first time in years, my future didn't look like an endless list written for someone else. Still, the old instincts tugged at me. Habitual loyalty, fear of conflict, the trained urge to fix. But I let the feeling drift through me and fade. Because my life was finally becoming mine, and I wasn't going back. I kept checking my phone, expecting Mom to call, expecting an apology that never came. By midnight, 23 unread messages blinked on my screen. None of them said, "I'm proud of you." Most said some version of, "You'll regret this." Maybe I would, but regret at least would finally belong to me. As I shut my laptop, the doubling contract notification blinked again. A reminder. Flight confirmed. 5 days. I whispered it out loud, testing the sound. 5 days till freedom. Mom didn't wait long to escalate. By the next morning, my phone was a war zone. Group texts, missed calls, guilt dripping from every message. "Mom, family meeting tonight. Dad, we expect you here at 7. Jenna, don't make this harder than it already is." It was astonishing how fast they could turn "please help" into "how dare you." I stared at the screen for a long time before typing the simplest answer of my life. "I won't be there." Almost instantly, the typing bubbles appeared. "Mom, you will." "Jenna, you're unbelievable." "Dad, watch your tone." I silenced the chat and turned my phone face down. The quiet felt holy. At 6:52 p.m., the doorbell rang anyway. When I checked the peephole, Dad stood there, still in his work shirt, jaw tight. "Opened the door, Emma." "No. Don't play games." "I'm not." He muttered something under his breath about disrespect, but I didn't move. Finally, the footsteps faded down the hall. I locked the deadbolt twice, leaned against the door, and let out a shaky breath. They weren't coming to talk. They were coming to win. The next day, Mom tried a softer weapon, a voicemail. Her tone sugar-coated and trembling. "Sweetheart, Jenna's trying her best. She needs a little support, just this once. Think about what family means." I deleted it halfway through. By evening, I got a FaceTime call. The family conference. I almost didn't answer, but part of me wanted to see their faces, wanted to finally stop pretending. When the screen lit up, all three were there. Mom in the kitchen, Dad at the head of the table, Jenna beside her with swollen eyes and perfect lighting. Caleb hovered in the background pretending to fix something on his phone. "Emma," Mom started softly, "can we please talk like adults?" "I thought that's what I've been doing," I said. Jenna jumped in. "You embarrassed us. You made me look like a beggar." "I didn't make you anything," I replied. "You sent a demand and I declined." Her lips trembled. You don't believe in me. You never have. That one stung, not because it was true, but because it used to work. Jenna, I said carefully, belief isn't a bank loan. Caleb chuckled, low and condescending. She's so uptight. No wonder you're single half the year. My voice didn't rise. Caleb, do you even hear yourself? He smirked. Just a joke. Mom cut in sharply. Enough. Emma, your sister's business could change her life. She just needs someone responsible on paper. Dad leaned forward, hands clasped. It's not even risky. It's a small loan, 150 tops. You'll cosign. That's all. That's all, I repeated, letting the words sink in. You're asking me to guarantee a $150,000 loan for someone who quit her job last week? Mom's voice hardened. Don't be dramatic. We raised you better than this. I felt something snap. Not anger, just clarity. You didn't raise me to say yes. You raised me to survive saying no. The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. Dad's face flushed. Watch your tone. I am, I said evenly. It's calm. Mom's eyes narrowed. So that's it? You're walking away from your family? I'm walking away from being your financial plan. Jenna started crying, mascara pulling at the corners of her eyes. You destroyed this family. I didn't destroy anything, I replied. You sent a demand and I declined. Her lips trembled. You don't believe in me. You never have. That one stung, not because it was true, but because it used to work. Jenna, I said carefully, belief isn't a bank loan. Caleb chuckled, low and condescending. She's so uptight. No wonder you're single half the year. My voice didn't rise. Caleb, do you even hear yourself? He smirked. Just a joke. Mom cut in sharply. Enough. Emma, your sister's business could change her life. She just needs someone responsible on paper. Dad leaned forward, hands clasped. It's not even risky. It's a small loan, 150 tops. You'll cosign. That's all. That's all, I repeated, letting the words sink in. You're asking me to guarantee a $150,000 loan for someone who quit her job last week? Mom's voice hardened. Don't be dramatic. We raised you better than this. I felt something snap. Not anger, just clarity. You didn't raise me to say yes. You raised me to survive saying no. The silence that followed was thick enough to touch. Dad's face flushed. Watch your tone. I am, I said evenly. It's calm. Mom's eyes narrowed. So that's it? You're walking away from your family? I'm walking away from being your financial plan. Jenna started crying, mascara pulling at the corners of her eyes. You destroyed this family. I didn't reply. I turned off notifications, opened my exit plan, and started checking boxes. Removed from phone plan, unlinked insurance, canceled utilities, closed shared credit line. Each completed task felt cleaner than the last. By midnight, 43 missed calls blinked on my screen. None from Mike. He knew. When the phone rang again, I finally picked up. Hey, he said quietly, you sound lighter. I think I'm just done, I said. Then do something about it. Not for revenge, for peace. That line hit deeper than I expected. At 10:04 a.m., I drafted one last message to my mother. I'm leaving for Dublin Monday. Please stop contacting me unless it's an emergency. I hovered over send, hand trembling, then I pressed it. The next morning, the retaliation came fast. Posts on Facebook about ungrateful children, Aunt Rose's chain messages about forgiveness, Jenna's cryptic story. Sometimes the ones you love hold you back. They wanted me to feel shame. Instead, I felt still. When Monday came, I zipped up my suitcase. The air in my apartment was cold, clean. Every bill in my name, every key in my hand. As I rolled my suitcase to the door, my phone buzzed one last time. A text from Mom. "We won't forget this." I typed back slowly. "Neither will I." Then I powered it off. At the airport, as the plane engines roared, I thought about every Thanksgiving table, every guilt trip, every silent yes that had built their comfort. And I thought about that one small no that tore it all down. When the wheels left the ground, my heart did too. Dublin was colder than I imagined. Gray skies, damp air, and a kind of silence I wasn't used to. But maybe that's why it felt like healing. My company apartment was small, one bedroom, white walls, a view of the canal. Everything inside belonged to me. Every bill, every key, every decision. No shared accounts, no borrowed peace. For the first week, I moved like someone learning to breathe again. I woke up early, walked to work through cobblestone streets, and drank coffee that actually tasted like mine. At night, I cooked for one and listened to the kettle whistle. Sometimes I caught myself waiting for the next crisis call that never came. The quiet felt strange until it didn't. Mike arrived that Friday, suitcase in hand and a grin that made the place feel less foreign. "You really did it," he said. "You left." I laughed softly. "Yeah, and somehow I'm still standing." He looked around the apartment. "It's peaceful here." "Peaceful feels weird," I admitted, "but I'll get used to it." We ate dinner on the couch, candles flickering against the rain-streaked window. My phone sat face down on the table, silent. When I finally picked it up, there were no new messages. For the first time in years, the absence of noise felt like a blessing. Days turned into weeks. I got promoted early, led my first project, made friends who didn't need rescuing. One afternoon, I scrolled through old notes, the payments, bills, utilities list I'd once treated like scripture. At the bottom, I added one final line: "Debt cleared emotionally and otherwise." A month later, Mom left a voicemail. Her tone was softer this time. "We're fine, sweetheart. Jenna found part-time work. Your dad says hi." I didn't call back, but I smiled anyway. Distance was doing what love never could. It made things kinder. Sometimes I'd stand by the window watching the canal lights ripple. The old Emma would have felt guilty for feeling okay. The new one just whispered, "I earned this." Sunday morning, sunlight spilled across the kitchen table, catching the steam from my coffee. No buzzing phone, no new demands, just quiet. I thought about that first text, the one that ended 15 years of family peace. "You'll take care of us." Maybe once I would have, but not anymore. I used to mistake being needed for being loved. Now I know real love doesn't drain you, it steadies you. I looked out over the Dublin skyline, smiling to myself. Peace didn't come with fireworks, it came with silence. If you've ever chosen peace over guilt, share your story below. You're not alone.